What's as finest as Freddy's Into the Pit hide behind the scenes from a game developer's point of view throughout the whole game. FNAF Into the Pit is a 2D game constructed in a 3D environment. So in this video, we're going to break down everything we can that you can't see in this terrifying sprite-based FNAF title. From hidden things out of bounds, to leftover assets by the developers, to how some of the tense scenes work. Along the way, I'll briefly recap sections so we're all on the same page. So let's jump in. So the prologue begins with Oswald showing off his legendary drawing skills, only to be interrupted by his father a moment later, so they can drive to Jeff's Pizza. Oz expresses his boredom to his father, wishing for something more eventful than a dusty pizzeria, which he definitely won't regret in a few minutes. Your dad then drops you off. Your father ends up being late to pick you up, so you explore the place a little bit. Eventually, you'll find a room containing a ball pit, get jump scared by a spider, and then cannonball straight into the past. Things look a lot different now, and the place is basically full of kids compared to before. You then meet up with two kids, Mike and Chip, to go play some pizza roller, which I completely nailed by the way. Afterwards, you'll play tag, and then a game of hide and seek, and you choose the worst possible place to hide, a vacant Freddy suit stashed in the back. We'll put a pin in the recap for now, and restart this level. As we restart the prologue, we can have a closer look at Oswald's drawings, and from another angle, we can watch as soon as he leaves the scene. This cutscene itself is a pixelated animation that plays out on a flat panel floating in space, though it's a little more complicated than that. When we jump ahead to the car scene, we see that it's the same story, a rectangular cutscene playing in an empty void. Though this cutscene appears to be a single looping image, it's actually made up of several different pieces that are used to construct the scene itself. As you can see, we can turn off several objects that make up this animated sequence, and by disabling the windshield, it'll look as though we're driving in the black and night with no headlights. We can also separate the layers into the 3D space they occupy in order to see how the animation is built in the scene. While playing through this short segment, you'd never know that it was composed of these various layers, so it's really cool to see from this angle. Continuing on, we'll stop at this intersection where we see a dead possum. And there are a couple of things you may have not noticed here, considering this level is only visible for about 5 seconds. For starters, there are a few broken windows on top of these buildings, and there's a rather neat secret you probably missed. This broken glass forms what looks like a spooky face, and the one next to it heavily resembles Spring Bonnie. On the other side, there's also what looks like Bonnie's head as well, and it'd be hard to catch all these things in the short time they're visible. Now, it didn't feel right moving out from the scene without breaking something, so I turned the truck behind us into a monster truck. When the cutscene plays out, our car will pull up beside the possum, and the truck will ease its way into the scene, committing the softest fender bender I've ever witnessed. After passing by our dearly departed possum friend, we'll arrive outside of Jeff's Pizza, which from the outside doesn't seem nearly as bad as Oz made it out to be. If there weren't a pink eye infested time machine inside, I wouldn't mind spending the summer here. But with the intro sequence coming to an end, we'll enter Jeff's Pizza, where we'll gain control over the player. Once here, we can pull the camera back and get a much clearer look at how this map is constructed. As I said before, even though during typical gameplay, it appears to be a 2D side-scroller, the entirety of this map is built in 3 dimensions. Majority of the level's assets are placed on different layers at varying distances from the background. And using a sort of forced perspective, it creates the illusion of a 2D game with a more expansive range of motion. The tables, chairs, lights, and even NPCs are all objects placed in front of the background, and aren't really attached to anything. The ground we walk on is part of a flat image placed in the back of the scene, and because of this, the player isn't standing on anything at all. Oz's movement is also a bit different than you'd think, and as he moves up and down the scene, you can see he simply moves closer or further from the background itself. The camera is also tied to the player's position, which further helps in completing this illusion. All these factors work together to create the seamless appearance of a flat environment, which is really cool. Before we explore Jeff's Pizza, Oz sits by himself at a table across from some other guests. There are multiple versions of these characters present in the scene, they're just not loaded in at the same time. And by using my hacker powers, I managed to bring them back from an alternate dimension. I felt bad seeing Oz sit by himself though, so I moved this hidden set of guests over to his table so he didn't have to eat on his own. Oz still seems a bit sad, but hey, pizza parties are better with good company, even if they're multi-dimensional clones of people you've never met. And speaking of unexpected guests, Oz's father is also present in this scene, and we can bring him back into existence where he'll just stand there in his idle animation. Also, he's learned to levitate apparently. Glorious! Now as we head into the ball pit room, we're hit with a pretty sudden jump scare by a spider crawling across the screen. It turns out that the spider isn't just really close to the screen, but instead, it's as big as the ball pit itself. I thought it was odd that Oz was scared by a spider crawling on the other side of the room, but this massive, 8-legged freak would scare me too, considering he's 3 times my size. The spider itself is layered in such a way that Oz always appears behind it, even though he's much closer to the camera in the scene. The spider itself crawls across the map, and you can even see his red eyes at one point, which is barely visible during a regular playthrough. While exploring this room, I found a few hidden assets that you would never typically see. These foreground sprites are, at least to my knowledge, old assets that were eventually replaced but never removed from the game. The earlier version of this game took on a more Super Nintendo-like visual style before it was ultimately changed. We can now jump into the ball pit and travel back in time, and during this transition, we'll see that Oswald basically dives into an invisible Mario pipe, disintegrating as he does. The balls from the ball pit then fly upward and out of sight as a separate group of them fall in front of the camera. After arriving in the past, we'll find ourselves in a near identical room, only now it's a lot brighter and full of children. There's not much to see in this room at the moment, so let's continue onward. Out to the main dining area, the stage is now occupied by a few recognizable characters, Bonnie, Freddy, and Chica. These characters are just kind of grooving together on stage, but together might be stretching it a bit. From another angle, you'll see that each of these characters are standing a lot further apart than they appear, even though it looks like they're basically side by side from our usual view. Next, we'll meet Chip and Mike, who invite us to play Pizza Roller in the arcade, but not before this creepy silhouette appears to stare us down. When this short animation plays out, a separate door is loaded in directly on top of the real one, and it displays a short animation. As the door closes, this animated asset will be unloaded and reveal the regular door once again. Before continuing onto the arcade to meet up with the others, I removed the invisible barrier blocking our access to the stage, and I was able to climb up with the animatronics. Fortunately, they have no colliders, and we can't interact with them, so we won't be taking part in the Bite of 85 today. We can, however, walk backstage, which we're definitely not supposed to do yet, and have a look around. Because I want to tackle this game as chronologically as possible, we won't be messing around here for a little while yet, but I just wanted to know that I could. With that being said, we can now head over to the arcade to play some Pizza Roller with our new pals. There's not a lot to see in this minigame, as the machine is only a flat image that's tied to the camera's position. When it's disabled though, we can see that the ball itself is moving in a 3D space. The machine is programmed to always appear behind the ball and power overlay, giving the illusion that the thrown ball is traveling down the lane and into one of the 7 holes. Something a bit more interesting though is an asset hidden within this level that's kind of a big deal. On the very far right wall of the arcade is a broken down arcade machine, and behind it is what looks like a torn up poster. It turns out there's a hidden door labeled Killer Door that we can make interactable using the power of hacks. Where this door leads you is what makes it so interesting though, and going through it takes you to the very last level of the entire game. Your father is tied to a chair here, and after being freed, Springtrap will arrive and take him away as usual. We of course don't want to finish the game yet, so we'll be heading back through the vents and doing things the hard way. Sorry Pops, I've got a game to break. Now after playing tag with Mike and Chip, they'll suggest a game of hide and seek, resulting in Oz hiding in the safest place imaginable, an empty Freddy suit. Despite this, the only threat we face here is Spring Bonnie as they walk by. From another perspective, we can see that the first-person view from the suit is loaded into the same scene as before, and is placed in front of the regular gameplay area. Also, Spring Bonnie never really walks in front of us. The enemy we see through the eye holes is only animated for what we can see. That means if we pull these layers apart, we'll see that the animation is still only visible for what we can see through the suit, which looks pretty strange. Understandable though, because animating sprite work takes a lot of time, so why create more work? After leaving the suit, we'll exit the arcade to find several children fleeing from the dining area. From another angle, we'll see that these kids clip directly through the wall as the doors open and nope, out of existence. The same applies to the children in the next room as well, and I really can't blame them. We'll once again run to Spring Bonnie, this time standing in the party hallway. During the sequence, they'll wave at the player and leave through the door behind them. And as you probably guessed by this point, this cutscene is constructed using multiple layers. By pulling them away from the backdrop, we can see that they'll walk through a non-existent door as the screen fades to black. After following them into the back, we'll open a door only to get jump scared as a chase sequence begins. From this angle, you can see that the door Oz opens and the room we're walking into are extremely far apart. We can also watch in super slow motion as we're attacked and really admire the effort that went into this short sequence. It's super creepy. If we successfully block the Yellow Rabbit's attack, we can see that a chair is thrown into the mix during this cutscene, and also Oz's hands throwing it. These objects are, in actuality, much like the door, way too far from the scene to actually benefit us. But hey, that's the magic of game design. During this chase sequence that follows, we'll have to run to the ball pit room and Marty McFly our way back to the future. You're basically forced to go to the ball pit room as well, since the potential hiding places in this map are currently inaccessible. If we were to restore usability to one of the vents though, we can actually break this sequence and safely evade our enemy. We can now walk around the pizzeria during this chase sequence without the constant threat of being jump scared. I was then able to sneak into the ball pit room, but unfortunately, the game re-triggers the chase and Spring Bonnie becomes aware of our location. So we had to quickly dive in to avoid our demise. So after you exit the ball pit, Oz's father will be waiting in the room to give you a stern talking to. Lucky for us, we won't be getting grounded today, since he gets dragged into the pit pretty much immediately by you-know-who. So, awesome? From another angle, we can watch as he's pulled in, and just sort of clips out of existence in the process. The same effect is used when Oz is trying to pull him out, essentially reconstructing his father out of thin air. They then slide towards the camera and lay there, looking extremely unimpressed. We're not even finished with the first night, and they seem completely fed up. Oz's dad is clearly not feeling like himself now, and drags us into the car so he can drive us home. We enter a driving sequence similar to the intro sequence, only now it's a lot darker, and we can see the reflection of Spring Bonnie in the mirror. As we arrive at Oz's house, we'll see that our Uber driver is definitely not who we expected. In this short arrival scene, there are actually two versions of Spring Bonnie present, the one in the car and the one that chases us as we run away. And by bringing them into existence early, we'll end up creating this rather frightening scene. Now, I wasn't expecting this, but when exiting the car, there's a brief period where both animatronics are present at the same time, which is way funnier than it should be. The copy who's licensed to drive then unloads as we make a break for it. We're then dragged into the house as the prologue ends and night 1 begins. Now as we enter night 1, we'll have to locate a phone somewhere in the house so we can call our mother to come and save us. We're free to explore Oswald's house before doing so, eventually stumbling upon the bedroom where Spring Bonnie is enjoying a little nap. We'll have to get their attention by making noise somewhere in the house, which allows you to grab the phone and contact Oz's mother. She arrives home shortly after, but much to our dismay, she doesn't believe anything's wrong. So we're sent to our room for the night. From here, we'll have to escape the house, so we grab a ladder from the attic and evade the animatronic hunting us as we head for the garage. After climbing through the window, we can choose a location to go, heading to Jeff's Pizza in order to search for our missing father. From here we dive into the past once again, find a kid trapped in an endoskeleton, and eventually find a screwdriver that will be needed to break him free. We'll have to head back to the future, take the trash to the mill for Jeff in order to get the basement key, and head to the past yet again to grab the screwdriver. We can then free the stuck child, only to be chased out by Spring Bonnie, and we head home as night 1 comes to an end. Jumping back in time, the very first location we'll check out is Oz's bedroom, because there's a lot more to see here than you'd expect. First off, we need to address the creeper staring in our window. When you load into this night, a silhouette can be seen looking through the window, and they'll unload when we try to investigate. We can force them back out of hiding and move them inside for a better look, and it's a lot creepier than I first thought. This creature, identified in the game files as the Stitch Wraith, is an Easter egg referencing the Fazbear Frights book series. To my knowledge, this creature only makes this one appearance, and it's a brief one. Looking at this monstrous creature up close is almost worse than seeing them in the window, and I'm glad we only encountered them once. Speaking of Easter eggs, the various posters in our room are also references to existing materials, both FNAF related and otherwise. For instance, this poster looks to be a depiction of Godzilla. There are a few real movie posters that look similar to this, but I can't say if it's one in particular. Among these posters, there's an Easter egg labeled Kurt Carrion poster, as well as a movie poster for the Twisted Ones, both being references to the Fazbear Frights anthology. Within this bedroom, there are also a multitude of hidden foreground objects, some being simple set pieces, and the others being duplicate assets of the objects placed throughout. That's it for the bedroom though, so we're going to say farewell to our Stitch Wraith companion here and move on. While being chased, you can hide in a multitude of locations to evade Spring Bonnie, but this leads to a short QuickTime event where the player must input certain buttons to stay hidden. Here, we'll have to stop the toys from giving away our position, and we can see that they just kind of load in out of sight and move upward. The hilarious thing about this is that the bedsheet hides something pretty unexpected. If we delete it, we'll see that our enemy is no more than a set of disembodied feet that walk by the bed. However, the moment we're jump scared in this sequence, the bedsheet magically reappears as we're attacked. As we continue this night, there are a few obstacles we need to complete before we can leave the house, and they're made complicated by the presence of a certain yellow rabbit. I decide to make friends with our enemy for the moment and break their AI, resulting in them running at Oz, but being incapable of killing the player. This resulted in them repeatedly running into me and screaming in my face, but that's the worst they can do. Well, that's what I thought anyway, but I'll talk about that in a moment. With my newfound safety, I made my way to the living room to have a look around, where I was once again able to bring some old assets into the scene. Most noticeably, the Super Nintendo-style objects now visible in the foreground. There's not much else besides this though. Next, I wanted to take a look in the attic, and this was a bit of a mistake. I had forgotten I previously broke our enemy's AI and hid in the chest, and after the hide-and-seek game, they just sort of slid away. They also couldn't leave the attic, nor could I exit the chest, soft-locking my game and forcing me to reload my save. Well played, sir. After grabbing the ladder and heading to the garage, I was expecting to just climb out through the window. For some reason, I was unable to do so, and I assumed it had something to do with the giant animatronic screaming in my face. So I ran to the other side of the house to get some distance, only to be jump scared by nothing. Unfortunately, a big sound effect when breaking games is a broken game. Shocking. Reloading the game once again, I managed to make my escape, and we can see the house from an outside view. Even here, there are older versions of these graphics in the game files that we can bring back and see in game. The house, yard, and background all looked a lot different, and it's interesting to see how it changed in the final build. Also, in the upper left window, we can see what I believe is the silhouette of Spring Bonnie as the light flickers. For the most part, there isn't a whole lot to see at Jeff's that we haven't already looked at, but while exploring, I found there are a bunch of old sprites in the arcade, similar to the retired graphics we looked at previously. They're mostly unused foreground sprites of what look like games and tables, but not much else. The same thing applies to the party hallway as well, with more Super Nintendo-styled sprites in the foreground that we can check out. Heading into the ball pit room, we can bring back a door blocked by boxes on the left side of the room, though I wasn't able to repair its functionality, so I can't use it unfortunately. As we jump into the past though, we'll have to assist the child stuck inside the endoskeleton. While here I was able to bring the unstuck version of this child, known in the game files as Trevor, into the scene early. That means there are two versions of this character present at the moment, except one's in a less fortunate state than the other. Now, even though he's standing right beside me, I forced the sequence to begin where we free him from the suit, making the trapped version completely disappear. I then interacted with Trevor as usual, resulting in him walking in place as the chase sequence began. He then ran to the left as Spring Bonnie appeared, and as I followed him, the game broke as I reached the door. Spring Bonnie was also locked in place, so I thought I was once again soft-locked in this case and would have to restart my game, but I spoke a little too soon. For some reason, I was randomly teleported back to the center of the map, and just a moment later, I came back to save Trevor again. This was really confusing, and even Spring Bonnie refused to deal with this today, and just left. Sadly, the game took away my ability to control Oz here, so I had to reset once more. And after finishing the chase sequence, we reached the end of night 1. All in a day's work, right? So we head home to get some sleep, but we're actually in for a scare. We then watch a quick nightmare sequence play out before Oz wakes up in his bed, ready to start the day with some breakfast. Sadly, there'll be no Eggos and orange juice today, only an awkward passing glance from our, Dad? Before leaving, we grab our lunch and then head off to school. A kid blows up some firecrackers, and we're told we can trade for some at the library. And with the school day over, we head outside. We then meet a girl named Gabrielle, who gives us a sketchbook full of animatronic drawings and notes, which could definitely come in handy. As night falls, we'll have to once again escape the house undetected, heading to Jeff's Pizza to continue our search for our missing father. We'll stop the recap there for now and head back to the start of day 2. So as the night begins, we'll enter a short sequence where Oz is having a nightmare of Spring Bonnie permanently replacing his dad. First, we'll see them drag our father into the ball pit, followed by a short sequence where the whole family's eating dinner together. It's funnier than it should be seeing this monstrous enemy peacefully sitting at the dinner table, but what I find more interesting is this attic door in the background. There's an attic ladder in the game files that we can bring back into the scene, and it covers the hatch we typically see. Not only this, there's also a second version of the dining room here that we can check out as well. Although the differences between them are minimal, it's still interesting to see. After this, they'll walk into frame, creating a King of the Hill type pose, just before Oz wakes up terrified in his own bed. What's funny is that each of these nightmares takes place within the same general scene, so there are certain assets left behind. Because of this, I was able to bring Oz's actual dad into this sequence, which makes this family portrait all the more strange. After waking up and heading to the kitchen, I wanted to have a closer look at this map before leaving. Within this level, I found that there's a bunch of Super Nintendo styled assets hidden in the foreground. It looks to be a kitchen range, including some old pots and pans, and on the other side, what looks like a cabinet as well. They're a stark contrast to the updated graphics the game uses now, but definitely interesting to compare the old and new designs. The dining room is the same story, and we can bring back to the scene a large shelf with a cookie jar on it, alongside what looks like a wine rack with some bottles beneath it and some foliage on the other side. While here, I also managed to bring back what I believe is the old version of the dining room in its entirety. The walls are a lot brighter, and a few of the assets are different in appearance, but once again, the changes in this level are pretty small. Before leaving, I discovered that Oz's mother is present in this room as well, but she's pretty busy floating at the moment, so we'll just leave her alone. What I find really cool about this map in particular is Spring Bonnie's model. As we walk by, they'll follow us with their head, and the animation team had to animate each frame of this, and it's surprisingly unnerving for a pixelated enemy. As we head through the living room, there's an object here during the day that wasn't visible when we passed through this room previously. It's a partially transparent asset labeled Living Room Table Reference in the game files, and I imagine it was either used during initial development or when updating the graphics before the final release. Either way, it's a spooky ghost table, so I'm getting out of here. After heading to school, we can have a look at this massive hallway, and a few things hidden within. As you probably could guess, there are a bunch of old sprites in the foreground, and they add a lot of character to this map as a whole. There's water fountains, trash cans, and some greenery that really add some color to the room. Among these hidden objects are two railings near the school's entrance, which make it a lot easier to find the entrance compared to the welcome mat. Heading outside, we'll meet up with Gabrielle for the first time, and while there isn't a ton to see out here, there is a pretty interesting Easter egg you probably didn't know about. Using the power of hacks, I was able to bring a scrapped minigame back from the dead. This minigame is called Guard Duty in the game files, and in it, you'll give candy to the 4 animatronics surrounding you. We can actually move the camera around this minigame as well. There's not a whole lot to see here though, as this entire minigame takes place within a small white square. We can, however, find an alternate version of the Don't Let Them Escape text. In the game files, the trigger for this minigame is labeled Stitch Wraith, and to my knowledge, there are specific dev builds where the Stitch Wraith can spawn on this map. Unfortunately, I was not able to force spawn them, but I still wanted to mention it. After calling it a day and heading home, we'll have to escape the house once more in order to look for our dad in the past. In the process, we can take a look at the wardrobe's hide-and-seek minigame where Spring Bonnie passes by, forcing us to duck left or right to avoid being spotted. Like the previous minigames, the sequence plays out in front of the main level area, although for some reason, this one had a massive black square behind it. Before Spring Bonnie walked by, I removed the doors in the wardrobe, which kind of defeats the whole purpose of hiding inside. They didn't seem to care though, and walked by as usual, forcing us to hide behind the non-existent door to evade them. It makes no sense, but hey, it's pretty neat seeing this animation unobstructed. Also, for those of you that may be wondering, there are actually two versions of Spring Bonnie used here that walk in opposite directions, negating the need for turning animation as they come back around. I had both of them present in the scene at once, but one of them randomly unloaded as they passed by. After bringing them back though, I was somehow able to survive both Bonnies checking the wardrobe at once. Maybe it's because I broke the minigame, or maybe I'm just that good. Now back into recap mode, we'll go to Jeff's Pizza to once again travel to the past in search of our missing father. While looking around, Oz hears the voice of a kid somewhere in the pizzeria, and sets out to find him instead. As we head for the kitchen, we'll be jump scared by a certain junk food loving chicken. Fortunately, our school lunch saves the day, and Chica completely ignores us to dig in, so we head back to the future for a pizza slice to distract her. We can't afford a whole pie, so instead, we go catch a rat, release it to scare a customer, and snag some pizza behind Jeff's back while he's distracted. From here, we lure Chica out with the slice, only to find Mike hidden beneath the sink in the kitchen. He bolts through the exit, and when following him, we'll be ambushed by Spring Bonnie. If we leave through the door with Mike, we'll exit Jeff's altogether and reach one of the game's bad endings, leaving Oz to search for his father in a time he doesn't belong. So jumping back in time, when I headed to Jeff's on night 2, I decided to take a look around the backstage area for some old assets, and I was not disappointed. There were a few Super Nintendo styled animatronics and parts hidden that you can see here, including some old endoskeletons. Somehow these older versions were almost creepier than the new counterparts. After heading into the past, we'll have to search for a kid that we heard screaming somewhere in the pizzeria. Eventually we'll open the door only to catch a glimpse of Chica before getting properly jump scared. scared. We can break the scene down and remove the objects obstructing our view, where we can see that her body just sort of unloads when leaving our sight. Her head then pops in from the bottom left corner and screams at us. After this sequence finishes, she'll chase us to the other side of the room, where Chica grabs our lunch and dips. She then unloads after reaching the end of the hallway, which is something we can't usually see since the camera remains focused on Oz. Before we can rescue our trapped friend, we'll have to grab a slice of pizza from Jeff's in the future, a task that requires the help of a trapped rodent to accomplish. I made my way to the customer we typically scare, and I was able to load in the frightened version at the same time as the original. I also load the rat in, but unfortunately this didn't trigger the objective and successfully distract Jeff, which kinda bummed me out. So I moved some things around instead and had Jeff attack the customer. He definitely seems distracted now, but I kinda feel bad for his victim. He's just standing on the table, swatting them relentlessly with a towel. Glorious! After grabbing the pizza and bringing it into the past, we can put it in the hallway to lure the chicken out. She simply leans down, grabs the food, and then heads out. Of course, she doesn't really walk through any doors. The animation plays out, and she fades away in the process. We can now get Mike out of the cupboard, and in the process, he appears from behind a floating cupboard door. Now, when we head for the exit with Mike, we're attacked by Spring Bonnie during our attempted escape. During this sequence, there are two sets of doors present in the background. The ones baked into the background, and the animated ones on top. When we're attacked, the front set of doors will open as the yellow rabbit pounces on us, clipping into existence as their animation plays out. Because they're only flat images loaded into the existing map, we unfortunately can't break apart these ending scenes. So now we'll head home and dive into day 3. After waking up, we'll head to the school where Dylan, our bully, slaps us with a stretchy hand. Our teacher confiscates it, and after a nightmarish flashback, we'll be asked to retrieve a book from the principal's office. We find the principal locked out of her office, find her key in another classroom, and snag the book from inside, taking Dylan's stretchy hand for our troubles. We'll head back into the past, and because an endo is blocking the now broken doors, we'll have to find a key to get inside the arcade. Using the stretchy hand, we open a vent, grab the arcade key, and enter the arcade to find Bonnie tying Chip up. After a brief chase, we'll fix Bonnie's guitar using some strings from the mill, get chased through the vents, and eventually free Chip. We then encounter Freddy as we make our escape, and night 3 comes to an end. Rewinding time, I want to take a quick peek at the classroom, and for the most part, it's the same as before. The only difference is that there's a second clock within the game files that reads 2:55. It's just currently flipped for some reason. This clock replaces the previous one when we return to the principal's office, which I didn't even realize during my first playthrough. As we enter the principal's office, we can bring even more foreground assets back into the game. There are more old map additions, including a metallic desk and a handful of books, but not much else. We can walk back to the classroom though to return the book, and I found that there are multiple versions of the children present in this level. By bringing them into the scene, we can make the class look a bit more full. There's a second copy of the teacher as well, and we can see that neither of them have legs. Now before we head home, I decided to stop at the library really quickly to test a theory. On day 4, we can come to the library where Jet, the firecracker kid, will be waiting to trade us a firecracker. On day 3, he isn't supposed to spawn here, but I was able to force him into the map early, and to my surprise, I could trade him as usual. It turns out Jet is present on this map the entire time. He just isn't loaded in. I still won't be able to use it for a while, but at least I have it. After diving into the ball pit, we'll make our way to the arcade in order to free Chip, but first we'll meet with Bonnie. If we adjust the camera during the scene, we can see there are 2 primary objects that make up this sequence. Bonnie is separate from the rest of the animation, and we can pull him away from the background to illustrate this. He slowly turns around to look at the player, and we can even see the red glow that's meant to cover his eyes. After this short scare takes place, Oz will run the opposite direction and leave the arcade. What's interesting is that Bonnie never even stands up, so we never really had to run in the first place. Before we continue, we'll have to head to the mill for Bonnie's guitar strings, and when we arrive, Dylan will snap a picture of Oz searching through the trash. We can watch from another angle as this takes place and see that Dylan just sort of appears as the screen flashes. Afterwards, he'll simply walk off screen and unload completely. What's interesting is that the flash effect is left within the scene after this takes place, and we'll see that it's a huge white square meant to cover your screen completely. The most neat thing I found in the mill, however, is the legacy version of the building itself. It used to look a lot different compared to now, and instead of a dilapidated brick building, it used to have a much more old school appearance. There were wooden structures outside, and it looked much more like a traditional mill. As I headed back to Jeff's, I was bothered by the distinct lack of doors after Spring Bonnie destroyed it in the past, and so I used my hacker magic to bring them back into our plane of existence. Although Oz still comments about the lack of doors, I feel they tie the room together nicely. I'll send you the bill, Jeff. After the chase with Bonnie begins, we'll run backstage in order to evade him, only to be attacked in the vents. I wasn't able to view this scene from another angle, unfortunately, as it appears this cutscene is a short animation with everything baked into one file. When we go into the arcade to rescue Chip, we'll be chased off by Spring Bonnie as Freddy blocks the bottom doorway. From another angle, we can watch as these animatronics load in instantly as we attempt to leave. And Freddy pretty much remains still throughout this sequence. I broke Spring Bonnie's AI during this chase so that we can mess around with this sequence. And I was able to bring the previous version of Oz and Chip back into the map. Somehow there was a second Chip that appeared behind the first one, so there are 4 people in total here. Spring Bonnie's screaming in our face, Freddy's blocking the door, and all 3 clones are frozen in time. To top it all off, Chica appeared and started causing a racket as the lights went out. This room quickly fell into utter chaos, and I don't know how to feel about it. But it's still glorious. As if things weren't bad enough, Bonnie lunged out from underneath the table and grabbed my ankle as I tried to escape. Luckily, these characters are layered separately, so he's not really holding me at all. Now as we enter day 4, we'll start by heading to the school, only to be confronted by Dylan, who makes fun of Oz for nosing through the trash. We start hallucinating as this takes place, seeing endoskeletons in place of students and the animatronics as our bullies. Oz snaps and attacks Dylan, not realizing it wasn't real, and so we make a break for the ball pit after coming to. In the past, we'll blind Freddy with a firecracker and enter the security room. And here we'll find another kid who needs our help. We check the cameras, get jump scared, and then distract Spring Bonnie so the child can escape. Upon our return, we'll see Spring Bonnie leading the child into the freezer on the cameras. So we'll grab the hammer from the arcade, break the lock on the freezer, and save the kid trapped inside. From here we make our escape, leading into the 5th and final day. Rewinding time to when we meet up with Dylan, we can take a look at this scene from under a closer scope. As the scene plays out, we can watch as each of our classmates turns into an endoskeleton one at a time, and our bullies become some groovin' animatronics. As soon as he shoulder checks Dylan, the screen flashes, and each of these characters becomes normal again. Also, although it'd be hard to tell, we never leave the school even when the screen flashes at the start. We can bring back the animatronic assets in the present scene and take a look around. This party room is loaded into the school hallway and we can run around as we please. Also, now the previous characters were unloaded, so they're all standing in the same scene, making it a bit crowded in here. Overall, this scene is pretty haunting, especially when the lights go out around us and we're surrounded by these glowing-eyed monstrosities. Now, when we head to Jeff's, he won't be standing in his usual position at the front counter. I brought him back from an alternate dimension though, and he doesn't seem too bothered by it, considering we can interact with him as usual. After passing Jeff, we'll run and bump into him again in the next room as we pass by. Don't worry, Jeff, I definitely didn't clone you while you were in the room. Just promise me you won't check the front counter. Arriving at the security room, the first thing I want to check out was how the camera system functions. Typically we'll view the pizzeria's various rooms through a classic FNAF style security camera, but how does this actually work? Well, by moving the player camera while using the security system, we'll see that the static overlay is applied to the screen itself, but the room we're viewing is loaded in elsewhere in the map. When Spring Bonnie appears on the cameras to lead the lost child away, we can see that a copy of the party hallway is loaded into the map, and these NPCs simply walk to the door on the right side. Each of these areas are loaded in at the same time, just temporarily hidden so they can be easily accessed when needed. As for the security room itself, we can turn on a handful of old assets that are surprisingly creepy. There's an old desk without any monitors on it, as well as what looks like a wide yellow window. With these assets restored, the room bears a striking resemblance to the FNAF 3 office. There's even a box of what looks like animatronic masks, or parts of some kind, placed in the corner where they would be in FNAF 3. While I was in here, Freddy poked his head into the room as well, which was honestly terrifying. When we head to the freezer after Spring Bonnie impedes our rescue, we'll use the hammer to break the lock and free the child stuck inside. As we open the door using our telepathic powers, the kid will load in directly in front of it while also appearing behind it. As we move the camera, we can see past the crop effect used here that gives the appearance they're behind the freezer door. You can also see it doesn't line up perfectly, so they clip on top of the door by mere pixels. We're then attacked by Spring Bonnie, who uses a similar effect, appearing from behind an invisible wall as they pick us up. Now, on day 5, we head straight to Jeff's with no stops beforehand. When we get there, the screen flashes as Jeff's pizza temporarily changes into Freddy's pizza. Inside, the ball pit door is locked, so we ask Jeff for the key, escape an unexpected chase with Spring Bonnie, and dive into the the Past. From here, we'll have to get backstage using the vents in order to obtain the party room keycard, which is found in a stack of animatronic parts behind the stage curtains. We then enter the party room, where a trapped girl tells us about mumbling coming from the vents, and following them leads us to the killer room. Here, we find Oz's dad, freeing him from his binds, only to have him taken again. We chase them into the ball pit room, punch the rabbit out, and drag our dad into the future. We'll get to the endings in a little bit, but for now, let's rewind time. First and foremost, as we head to Jeff's, we'll catch a glimpse of the Freddy's building exterior, but only for a moment. I decided to make this rebrand a bit more permanent and replace the sign myself. The building has a much more retro appeal to it this way, and Freddy certainly deserves the screen time. You're welcome. And I'll be expecting my royalties in the mail. As we head inside, we'll pass by a character named Pizzeria Customer 7 who's eating at a table. I found it odd that I couldn't interact with them in any way, but I may have found the reason why. Now, I don't know if this can take place during regular gameplay, or if it was removed, but I was able to find Jeff in the game files and re-enable him. He's standing next to Customer 7 here, only to turn to Spring Bonnie and yell at us for skipping school. Not you too, Jeff! You were one of the cool ones! We'll find a much less rabbit-like Jeff up ahead in the security room, where he's playing solitaire instead of working. Similar to the version of this room seen in the past, we can find the yellow window I mentioned before, and some leftover Super Nintendo assets. They're mostly the same as before though, so there's not much to see here. When we enter the past, yet again, I looked through the map's assets once more where I found some ghost kids that we could re-enable. There are several versions of these kids present, and some of which overlap each other. Also, when moving the camera around, their eyes can get a bit wonky too. When we get to the party room, we'll meet with a trapped girl next to the vent. When she leaves the scene, she'll simply walk off screen to the right and disappear behind a transparent barrier. As we head through the vents, we'll reach the killer room where our dad is tied to a chair. Although this map is small, it hides a pretty interesting secret that you would never know existed here. Using hacks, we can force an animation to play called Jump Scare Animatronic Camera Freddy. This is a short, animated sequence where a terrifying Freddy lunges at the player, biting at them in the process. The flesh inside the suits is straight nightmare fuel, even for a pixelated jump scare. Before Spring Bonnie drags Oz's dad out of the room, we can see that this animatronic is already loaded into the scene just outside the map, looping in their walking cycle. They'll then walk into the room, grab our dad, and then vanish behind yet another transparent barrier. Now, as we arrive at the ball pit room, we'll find Spring Bonnie throwing our father into the pit. As we're attacked, a QuickTime event takes place where they lunge at us, and this scene is loaded in on top of the pre-existing level. Because I failed the QuickTime event, I was able to access a different ending than if I completed it. In this ending, Oz will awaken on the show stage and pass by a few waving animatronics. What's interesting is that within this sequence, I was able to restore access to the doors and get past Chica when you typically aren't able to. This shows that the map we're playing on isn't just a recreation of Jeff's, but it's the original level with all its interactable objects still intact. Other than the waving animatronics, this area is mostly unchanged. At the end of the sequence, Oz's eyes begin to glow, reminiscent of her father's throughout the game. Now I noticed that the animatronics are now friendly with Oz, his eyes are glowing robotically, and there's been a distinct lack of Foxy during our time at Jeff's. I can't deduce anything for certain, but hey, it's a theory. Now when restarting the level, we'll have to replay the sequence where we free the trapped girl a handful of times. But I'd much rather jump straight to the endings themselves, and lucky for me, the devs had the exact same thought. While exploring the game's files, I was able to locate and re-enable a hidden developer interface that's, well, incredibly overpowered. Within this hidden menu, there are toggles and submenus that can do just about anything. First, there's a God mode option. This has a similar effect to when I broke Spring Bonnie's AI previously. This option simply makes Oz invincible to the Yellow Rabbit's attack, and they'll simply scream in our face when they get close enough. Speaking of Spring Bonnie, there's also an option within this menu that lets us change his active state with the press of a button. Unlike the God mode option, this button allows us to disable their AI, so they're incapable of locating and chasing the player at all. This option doesn't always work the same way though, as in some cases, they'll walk around the map simply without seeing us. In others, they enter this unusual animation and get stuck in place. Either way, it's super handy. Another interesting option within this menu is the Show Colliders button. This will enable these green borders that indicate the object colliders within a given scene. Pretty much every asset within the level, besides the floor, has one, and it's pretty neat to see. And this is similar to a developer's view if they're building this within the Unity editor. We can also turn on a debug screen that contains various stats regarding Spring Bonnie's current state. These include how far away they are, the chance that they're able to find the player, and even the penalty for reusing hiding places. It's really cool because this further further explains how this enemy works, and the methods they use to locate and capture the player. The most fun option here is definitely the speed slider, and this lets us change the speed in which Oswald is able to run. We can move the bar all the way to the right and zip around the map at crazy speeds. We're so fast, in fact, that Spring Bonnie can't keep up with Oz while he's only walking, let alone sprinting. Most useful, though, are the options that allow you to load various levels and even teleport between the rooms within them. This option can be a bit buggy, as the objective doesn't always change when we load a certain level, but the good news is we can change the objective too. Finally, we can enable the second page of the menu and access a couple of options, one of which will benefit us greatly. Before we get to that though, I should mention that each of the minigames is available on this page as well. We can instantly load into each of them and have a look around, though they have very little to look at since they're short pixelated minigames and nothing more. I did, however, find a human forearm in the Help You Leaves minigame, and it's kind of unsettling to look at. As I said earlier, the various endings will take a while to achieve manually. Fortunately, the devs have us covered, and we can simply load each ending from this drop-down menu. So we select one and instantly arrive at the ball pit room. As we enter the good ending, we'll knock Spring Bonnie back, and as we arrive in the future, they'll get stuck in the netting after attacking Oz. They'll then wrestle to break free, ensnaring themselves in the process and choking themselves out. This cutscene takes place super far behind the level itself, and each camera shot is its own separate animated sequence placed in the scene. Playing them all at the same time results in a pretty freaky flashing effect taking place in front of the ball pit. The credits will then roll, and if we wait until the end, we'll see a sequence where Jeff follows a blood trail into the ball pit room. Spring Bonnie then lunges at Jeff, and this short sequence actually takes place within the same map as the pizzeria. It's just off to the side, where we can't see any overlap. In the next ending, the true ending, it's mostly the same as the good ending, except there's a sequence at the end where Oz and his family are eating together at a much livelier Jeff's Pizza. Fortunately, Jeff wasn't killed off in this ending, so he's still around to serve them with a smile on his face. The map is only a small reconstruction of the restaurant we typically see, and there's actually nothing for us to check out here beyond a different perspective of the scene. Also, as you may have guessed, the pictures within these endings are only flat images tied to the camera's position. And if we look beyond them, we can see that we're still loaded into the same scene as before. But with that, that's everything I found hidden behind the scenes in FNAF Into the Pit. I hope you all enjoyed today's dive into this pixelated FNAF experience, and if you did, make sure you're subscribed so you won't miss my future coverage on all your favorite horror games. Thanks for watching, and cheers!